woman I am talking about is none other than the one you call the proud little brat. And her name is Michal, the woman who is a princess, the daughter of King Saul, who was traded off, in quote, to marry David. And I think this is just one woman who assumed her way to death, like to destruction rather. She just kept assuming all through this story, and I deliberately have said this at the beginning so that as you journey with me, and by the way, it's also quite a long read, so please just stay with me and bear with me through this story. Give it pictures, extra biblical as it may seem, but these pictures will help you contextualize it for 2024. So as you read it, I want you to also look at the story with me. Let me know if I'm correct or wrong on this particular conclusion that this woman is just one woman who kept making assumptions at every major point in her life, and those assumptions really led her to destruction. Praise God. All right, so let's go. It's quite long, but please bear with me. Thank you. There's no doubt about it. This girl was raised as a spoiled, bratty princess with a loud mouth. Her father was King Saul and her mother was Queen Abinoam. She had an older sister who had 5 sons but died prematurely, so Auntie Michal raised them almost as her own. She became David's first wife for a while and then was given by her dad to Phalti, the son of Laish of Gilead. So King Saul would enjoy peace with the neighbor for a few years. She was recovered by David about 14 years or so later to be his wife again. Michal, pronounced as Michal with a very soft K, is the Hebrew female version of Michael. Even though she was raised as princess, she seemed to have a lousy attitude. We can discern in her inordinate desire for prestige and her indifference to the things of God. She also worshipped heathen gods. Although she was well aware of the covenant-making God whom Israel served, she still persisted in her perverse practice. Now our scripture reference is 1 Samuel 14:49, 1 Samuel 18:20-28, 1 Samuel 19:11-17, 1 Samuel 25:44, 2 Samuel 3:13-14, 2 Samuel 6:16-23, 2 Samuel 6:21, 2 Samuel 21 verse 8, and 1 Chronicles 15 verse 29. Now let's hear Michal's side of the story. Let's listen to Michal's side of the story. Hold on. I know what you're thinking before I even get started. Michal was one spoiled brat as a child and didn't change for the better when she grew up. Am I right? Admit it. And I believe you have come to this conclusion because you too fell in love with the wonderful, marvelous, handsome stud called David, my first husband. Assumption number 1. Michal, did I tell you that as a reader, and did I tell you that I'm calling you brat because I fell in love with your husband? Why is she assuming that everybody fell in love with her husband? You see, where is that assumption coming from? God have mercy. You just know he could do no wrong. You blame me. Would you at least listen to my side of the story? Okay. It's not easy being born into the family of a king. The court nannies, as well as folks, all attempted to turn me into a compliant, cute, sophisticated little princess they could all be proud of. I hated those tutors. Growing up was a real pain. Wear this, don't do that, get ready, go to the party, dress for this dinner, and on and on and on. It wasn't all bad. I don't want to give you the impression that it was all bad. I suppose I could have had any guy I wanted, but none was good enough, though there were lots to pick from. David, on the other hand, stood out in any crowd. buffed to the obtained degree, fabulous complexion, gorgeous hair, handsome face, already a hero as a teen idol, and totally desirable. Women and girls swooned in his presence. He put down the giant Goliath with a single shot and cut off his head. He was a man who put fear and trembling into my dad and his army. It's a funny story. This peasant kid took on the giant and single-handedly defeated him with the whole Philistine army. The song written about him went right to the top of the charts on every station in Israel. They even played it in Philistine territories, and the teen hoppers went nuts and sang the song like they did in Israel. Then my daddy, bless his heart, decided to bring David into the palace to provide background music. I learned he was a heavenly singer, harpist, and composer, and I would sneak in behind him behind one of the pillars to watch the show. Awesome. Then you know what, I fell in love with him. Daddy offered my older sister Merab to David, and he was so humble and embarrassed to turn her down. He told Daddy he wasn't worthy to marry a princess. You want to know the real reason? Assumption number 2. I think he did it because my sister was a dud. She was really the ugly princess. I think David had seen me. In fact, I made sure he had seen me. Assumption number 3. So he saw you and you assumed that he liked you. Somebody told Daddy I was madly in love with this David guy, so he made a deal with David. He hated David so much and was jealous of his fame and his song that he really wanted him dead. And Daddy, bless his heart, knew what a problem I could be and used me for a bait. I'm sure he thought that he'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone, get rid of David and just maybe get rid of me. Assumption number 3. Who told you that your daddy wanted to get rid of you? Did your daddy tell you himself that he wants to get rid of you? Did your daddy tell you himself that giving you off to David is a bait for him to get rid of you and to kill David? Okay. Well, he understood David again, because David killed 200 Philistines. It was disgusting. David was swaggering. Okay, so I skipped a part. Saul gave David a condition to go and get him the skin of 100 Philistines, in order to be able to marry Michal, right? So David goes, he gets this 200 skins. It was disgusting. David was swaggering into Daddy's throne room with his bloody bag in his hand, slapped it down on the table directly in front of the throne, and proceeded to count them one at a time, all 200 foreskins, and made sure Daddy saw them all. Oh, my dowry. Leave it to my dad. He knew what he was looking for. He had been planning on a funeral for David, not a wedding for us. Well, maybe this assumption is right after all. Nevertheless, we had quite a wedding, I must tell you. All the women were jealous and all the men were envious. I, the star of the show, I really knew underneath that David was using me as a pawn in the bigger scheme of things. Assumption number 4. Who told you? But it didn't matter, because I was madly in love with David. David loved to go sit under the stars, strum his harp, and sing me songs he had composed as worship to his God. We just weren't on the same page. This part is so important. We just weren't on the same page. Our interests were totally different. I loved him, but not his God. He loved his God and not me. I suppose I could have changed and learned how to play the tambourine or something. He loved to worship. I loved to shop. He loved to be with his army buddies. I loved dancing. We really had nothing in common, except to know that we really had nothing in common, except you know what. But it soon grew old. In about 90 days, the novelty wore off, and we really had nothing on which to build a meaningful life together. Then I helped David escape from Daddy and his army. It was a hoot But did my dad ever get mad and accuse me of not loyal to him? No way. I was still daddy's little girl, I guess. And David was on the run for years. I missed him, and I really did, for a while. And then my love just seemed to die. But Daddy, good old King Saul, had other ideas about what to do with me. He didn't want me hanging around his palace, so he married me off to Falti. After about 14 years, my dad was killed in action, and David was about to be crowned at Hebron. Abner, slick Abner, saw which way the wind was blowing, and he made a deal with David to support him. Then David did something surprising. He told Abner the deal was off unless he brought me back to be his wife and queen. As for David, I really think his ego was at stake. How could the new king in Hebron sit on the throne while his wife remained apart with a weak, wimpy rival? He was politically motivated. Says who? They ask you to come back home. You say he was politically motivated. Say who? Says who? Michal. Okay. David could not be seen as being weak in any area of his life. I saw through the whole thing. That's what people who assume do. They just keep seeing through everybody's actions and inactions. But gave him credit. He was a perfect gentleman in public as he welcomed me back home. He kissed me passionately. Yes, the fire could be stoked again, and said, "Welcome home, babe. I miss you." Okay, enough was enough. The first night was fabulous, but then things between us soon cooled off. You must understand that I was getting up in years at that time. I was no longer the ravaging beauty I was in our first marriage. Understand too that there were more beautiful women demanding his attention. How could I, the aging queen, keep up with gorgeous Bathsheba and the beguiling intelligent Abigail and the lovely Abinoam of Jezreel? You need to know David had a real weakness for beautiful women. Over his lifetime, he accumulated 20 of them. Some were wives, while others were concubines, which is a kind of word for mistress. All the kids with all these wives drove me crazy, not to mention my sister's kids that I had to raise. No, honestly, I began to be an angry person. I didn't like the fact that rage was always rumbling just beneath the surface, and sometimes I couldn't help myself. I was really getting desperate to keep my place in the palace. Come to think of it, I had lots of reasons to be mad as a wet hen all the time. Sister, if you had been in my slippers, you'd be angry, bitter, resentful, and desperate too. King Saul was dead. David was anointed king, and he needed to unite kingdoms so suddenly. I had value again to David. No, not value as a wife, but like some kind of chattel to be passed around and traded from one man to another, all without my control. Now that I've said it, I am really getting kicked off. David wanted more than another wife. He wanted to bring the Ark of the Covenant into what we now call the city of David. The ark was slow moving, and the dancers swirled around it. The sounds of celebration could be heard from miles. It was a spectacle to behold. Yes, I was concerned about what our neighbors were even thinking. Concerned about what people were thinking, because the dancing grew more frenzied. Then my husband, of all people, joined them. In fact, he began to lead the parade. He whipped off his robe, then his tunic, and all the other symbols of who he was as king, and ended up wearing a simple ephod that was nothing more than a tiny apron of loin clothes. Absolutely disgusting. It was beneath the dignity of a king. Thinking again, I think if I know him, he wanted to show humility and identify with his people, but he went way too far. Auntie, who defines how far? My God. Hey, David had walked out on me, ignored me, left me with the other guy for 14 years, married a whole bunch of other women, fathered lots of kids, and left me out of his life until it was politically important for me, his first wife, to come home. This dancing business was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Hello, auntie, I thought you said you like dancing. Oh God, I was furious. The whole episode really turned my stomach, and I wanted to throw up. Then I saw him finally coming home after the celebrations. Was I ever boiling mad? It was time for me to let all my frustration out on him. When I confronted him, I was described as the daughter of Saul and not the wife of David, and for good reason. Brilliant sarcasm dripped from my mouth with every word. Even you can feel it in the 21st century as you read the account. There is no wrath like that of a woman who has been made to look bad. God help us. So I told him in no uncertain words that I thought he had acted in the most unkingly way that reflected terribly upon me as his wife. He looked like nothing more than any vulgar commoner in the kingdom, and in so doing, he made me look like a fool too. She's literally just putting herself in front of everything. Why? Like, why? Okay, he looked like, okay, I missed the point, or so I've been told. Yeah, Michal, you really missed the point. David saw it as a spiritual passion for God. I saw it as nothing more than disgusting display of fleshly passion let loose for the whole world to see. He went from being happy and exhilarated to supremely angry in a nanosecond. He retaliated, and the last thing he ever said to me was, God chose me and rejected your father. I did my dance before the Lord, and the next time I will become even more undignified. You thought that was bad? You haven't seen nothing yet. Oh, was he mad? Here we stood nose to nose and toe to toe, and our voices carried out through the valley. A royal brawl at a royal palace. Then he twisted the knife. Another turn. This is the very last you hear of me. No, he didn't divorce me. He just put me in limbo to live out a lonely life as a rejected wife. Really, nobody ever speaks of me again, other than Samuel as he wrote his account. He closed my story with the saddest words that could be written about a Hebrew woman in royalty. And Michal, daughter of Saul, with no children, had no children to the end of her day. Perspective. This statement tells it all, and the sad end that I lived was to be written and be read by you. No, we didn't live happily ever after. Regrets? Yes, sister. Believe me when I say that I lived with regrets and sorrow and rejection and depression for the rest of my sorry life. Wow. Wisdom from Michal's life for the 21st century. So what do we need to learn? Obviously, it's pretty difficult for a hot-tempered woman and a hot-tempered man to get along. In this case, it was not a small fire set ablaze in the moment of anger. When Michal, we were right at the middle of the lessons to learn in 21st century. Wisdom from Michal's life. I was reading that before the line went off. I got it. It was a call that literally just stopped this IG life. Obviously, it's pretty difficult for a hot-tempered woman and a hot-tempered man to get along. In this case, it was not a small fire set ablaze in the moment of anger, which Michal let it all out. It was the end of their relationship. When it comes to worship, we are to worship God in spirit and in truth. Michal had no relationship with God and therefore no desire to worship him like David did. David showed us how to make our worship a total commitment. It sets the standard in worship to the Lord. You can read his passion in the many psalms that he wrote. Okay, thank you everyone for reading this with me. It's been quite an interesting journey, and the story of Michal comes with a lot of emotions and I think even arguments. So you can watch this and get in the comment section, or send me a DM, right? I'd love to read from you. I'd love to hear from you on what you think about this phenomenal woman. Now, like I was trying to say or establish before we went off, that can you really blame Michal for many of these things that went wrong, especially the last straw that broke the camel's back? Because this girl was raised up in the palace. She was raised to become not just a princess, but maybe a queen, and so she was constantly being told what to do. And so the whole idea of telling other people what to do, because we do to others the things that have been done to us, do you understand? So the process of telling her what to do every time had already been woven into the fabric of her genes. It was already woven into the fabric of her genes, and she couldn't do otherwise. So when she saw that David was acting contrary to protocol, the kingly protocol, she couldn't but stop him in his tracks. She couldn't but correct it and try to nip it in the bud, because she had already been accustomed to being told that she ought to live according to the tenets and the protocol of the palace. So that is what she has always known. Even when she wasn't with David, she was still in another kingdom, married to another king. Everything for her has always been about royalty and how royalty ought to behave. For me, I think the major issue here is the foundation as well, and it is the fact that both of them were opposites of each other. You remember our series on how to pray and prepare for your marriage, not just how to plan, but how to pray and prepare for marriage. And we read praying for your wife, and we looked at it from the man's perspective, like what does a man desire in a woman, what does a man pray for in a woman. So we turned all those things into oil of myrrh and sweet perfume to pray ourselves, in preparation for marriage, just like Esther. Now, the thing we learned on the first day was that marriage requires a lot of sameness. At the beginning, God said concerning Adam, he says, I will make him a help meet for him. And when we looked at that word help in an elaborate manner, we saw that help in that regard also speaks of comparable, another that is comparable to him. When we look at comparable, we think, oh, maybe it's like competition or something. No, it is same, one and the same. That when both of you stand together, remember I said this when we're looking at Abigail, when you stand together, you mirror each other. When they look at you, they see him. When they look at him, they see you. Both of you are same on many things. A couple of days ago, I went to visit a friend, and she's really been happily married. Honestly, I must tell you, I've been friends with her for almost a decade, and they moved into their new house, and they're doing a thriving business. They have 2 kids, and I noticed that my friend and her husband are still the same. I literally had to tell them that, do you guys know that one of the reasons that you are sticking together, I just found a way to say it, but what I was just trying to emphasize is that sameness, that both of you are still same. Like, you talk alike, you do the same things, you have the same interests, you have the same appetites, you have the same values, right? You esteem the same things. So in this case, Michal is already telling us, hello, this guy loved his God, he didn't love me. I loved him, but I didn't love his God. That is already a disaster. So David would love to worship, but Michal would love to go and shop. David would love to be with his war buddies, his battle buddies. Michal would love to just stay with the girls and dance and show off, right? My dear sister, my dear brother, the question we need to consider today really is, does opposite attract, or do opposites attract in 2024? Because many people are married as a result of this doctrine, and on the wedding night they realized that they were not going to be able to live together, like literally. And so 3 months down the line, 1 year down the line, the marriage is over. Some even die inside it within that short space of time, because they just realized all of a sudden that they cannot cope, like they cannot forbear this person, like they cannot stand this person, because this person is behaving totally different. He wants to go left, I want to go right. I can't even understand why he wants to go left, so he's driving me nuts. Do opposites really attract? What is the extent of sameness that both of us need to have before we get into marriage, lest our story becomes like Michal and David? I'm sure there's somebody learning from this today, and I'd love to hear from you. So please send me a DM or leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. My Instagram handle is olutostos, or you can send a DM to When Single Spray on Instagram. I would love to read from you. I mean, people get married and realize that their spouse is not even straight, and maybe they saw it as a red flag, but they ignored it, and they ignored it outrightly. So we need to check that doctrine really, because they rang it in our ears so much that the only thing we even started looking out for in every guy is, oh, how do I compliment him? How do I compliment him? What am I bringing that is opposite of him? Oh, he loves white and I love black. That means we are compatible. Hello, I agree, but are you comparable? Can we count many more things that you have in common and you can do together, so that your marriage will be sustained and you will not argue for the rest of your life? I can't emphasize that enough. Okay. Another thing I think we need to look at with Michal is the fact that maybe she wasn't actually desperate for prestige. She just wanted to keep her role, her position, her place. She wanted to keep that position of a first queen at that. She just wanted to keep her office. And I tell you what, when a woman gets into that zone of struggling for power, trying to retain power, reason does not make sense anymore. For me, I think it takes a level of dying to just become numb, because at that point you are not thinking well again. I don't know why. Maybe because I've experienced it a couple of times, and I've realized that when it comes to retaining position for a woman, when a woman feels threatened in her office, when a woman feels threatened in her role and in her duties, or as she's wielding power, then when there is a sudden turbulence, there's a sudden shift, in what seems like a particular office that she's already used to, she begins to just think things that are not there. She's just swayed by emotions. You think I'm wrong? Okay, what about Vashti? Do we really know what happened with Vashti? When they called her and they said the king wanted to see her, can you imagine how many tons of imaginations and assumptions were going on in her mind? She also, because it's at that point that the woman begins to act irrational. So Vashti all of a sudden says, I'm not interested. Vashti says, I'm not interested. I'm not going to come. I'm not going to join him. Maybe somebody had said, hey, Vashti, it doesn't really matter. Oh, just die to self. Just don't think about it. Just go. Don't worry. Imagine how Abigail could have played out the role of Vashti, the charming Abigail, the sweet talk Abigail, the very humble Abigail, right? How would she have played the role of Vashti if she was in her shoes, right? We don't even know. But all we know was that Vashti just decided, you know what, I'm not going to listen to him. Some people have assumed that the only thing that would have made a queen to say no is the fact that the king wanted to show her off, stark naked. We don't really know. But we just know that this woman said she wasn't going to appear before the king. Okay? So when it comes to keeping power for the woman, emotions just go gaga. Like her head, she just goes bonkers. Like she's really not thinking straight anymore. So another thing I want us to bring up from the life of Michal is this assumption. Like, I didn't know that assumptions could be so repulsive the way I have seen it in Michal. In my head, I'm like, if she could just stop assuming. She's already thinking, oh, the reason they want to marry me off to David is because David is a threat to her father, King Saul, and so he needs to take David out. And the reason he wants to marry me off to David is because he wants to get rid of me, because I'm already a hell of trouble in the home. How can you be a hell of trouble in the home when you are the one who has been charged with the responsibility of taking care of your late sister's 5 little children? So is that assumption still holding water? Okay, David called me back just because he was politically motivated. How would he be king in Hebron and his wife will remain in the city, or will remain as wife to another rival king in another place? It wasn't politically motivated. It was just right for him to bring you back home as his queen, his first queen. So we see Michal literally assuming our way out of the will of God. Assuming our way out of the will of God. Oh, I positioned myself, so David saw me, and the reason he turned down my sister is because he liked me. And the reason he turned down my sister is because he must have observed me as well. He saw me and so he liked me. Says who? He turned down your sister, he turned down your sister. Did he tell you the reason? No. If he didn't tell you, you can't assume. When he was dancing too much, and so all the girls were already falling in love with him. Says who? The assumptions were way too much. She assumed herself out of God's purpose. Is it not the same David that Michal married? I'm sorry, is it not the same David that Abigail married? Is it not the same David that Bathsheba married? And she was even still communicating with him in his old age. In the very front of Bathsheba like this, they went to bring Abishag to come and keep David warm. And she allowed it. Michal, would you have allowed it? That your king is old, and now they think the best thing to keep him alive is to bring a warm girl to him. I don't think Michal would have allowed it. Well, she was still alive. Maybe she wasn't aware, or maybe she just couldn't do anything because she said she was already ignored. You see, that's what happens to any woman in power. That's what happens to any woman in power who acts irrationally. At the end of the day, the woman just becomes relegated or pulled out of office, because the more irrational she gets, the more brash she gets, the more the law is weirded at her, the more the wrath of the law comes at her. So something that on a normal day shouldn't have been an issue, the moment the woman makes it an issue, that thing also rises. The law also rises. The anger of the authorities also rises. If Vashti did not say no, the nobles of the king would not have said anything. But they said, we're not going to allow this, because all the women, they just began to elaborate the whole thing. They were just making it bigger and bigger, just because the woman said no. Do you understand what I'm saying? So as women, I think it's so important for us to die a certain death. Just die a certain death. That when it comes to this, my role, when it comes to this office, the discharge of this responsibility, this place that I'm occupying, when it comes to this, my place as my husband's wife, anything that comes as a threat, if you don't have facts to back up your conclusion, don't ever assume. Where it is possible, please ask questions. Be open to communication, right? Keep the communication lines open. Have conversations with people. Be amiable, be amicable, be flexible, be malleable, okay? Don't just go ahead and assume, and then your emotions start to run roughshod over you. You just go down a tangent and you're just off. Because the more you go off, the more the wrath of the law will be wielded against you. I pray that God helps us. I pray that God helps us. May He deliver us from assumptions. May He deliver us from assumptions, and may God open our eyes to the things that are woven in the fabric of our culture and our mindset that are detrimental to our growth and development today. And may He help us to pull those things out and reshape our minds, and let our minds be transformed by His word and by accurate teaching in the name of Jesus Christ, that our past will not hold us back from the future, that the thing that seemingly was good and a huge investment in our lives will not turn out to become our disadvantage in the future, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. I pray for every woman who has experienced this Michal kind of thing, that one moment of anger just literally turned your world upside down. One moment of anger has now put you on the road of regret and resentment and rage and anger and hatred. I pray for you in the name of Jesus that there will be healing in your heart, and everything that has become barren as a result of that one moment of anger, the Lord will wash you in His mercy, and it will cause you to bring forth again in that area. It will cause you to be fruitful again in that area. You will not always live in regret. You will not always live in sorrow. You will not always live in abandonment in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you all so much for joining today. I am super excited. If you have watched this on YouTube, this is When Singles Pray, and I want you to also get on along with us on our Instagram platform at When Singles Pray on Instagram. But before you go, please click on this like button, this very one that you are seeing. Also, do well to click that kite button to share it, copy the link and share with as many who will be blessed by this video. I want you to please subscribe to this channel before you go. This is Desperate Housewives of the Bible. I will come your way again tomorrow as we look at yet another fantastic character in this series. But until then, do stay safe, stay sane, and have a wonderful time. God bless you, and bye-bye.